Hello, everyone. I'm Tim Pearson, and welcome to the United States Wrestling Official Association Referee Webinar Program. In today's webinar, we're going to discuss the quad pod. Similar to the Merkle, the quad pod position also creates some angst and confusion amongst fans, coaches, wrestlers, and referees. Very similar to the Merkle, the issue as I see it is how we evaluate and score the quad pod in Freestyle and Greco, which is counterintuitive to how the quad pod is evaluated and scored in American folk style. Basically, it's the same position, yet it's scored very differently. So, what is the quad pod and why is it scored so differently? Well, first, the quad pod is an American folk style takedown. If we look at our picture to the right, we'll see red wrestler has blue in a quad pod. Now, when this position is attained, beyond reaction time, with one or two hands bearing the weight, a takedown shall be awarded. So in folk style, in this position, because the weight is being, the bearing of the weight is on his two hands, a folk style takedown is determined and awarded. Now in Freestyle and Greco-Roman, a quad pod is not a takedown. If we refer to our rule book, Article 39, value assigned to actions and holds, it tells us that a 2-point takedown, the offensive wrestler has to overcome his opponent, gain control, be behind the hips with 3 points of contact down. So as we look at our picture to the right, our offensive wrestler is behind the hips. He does have control. However, he does not have 3 points of contact on the mat. Therefore, Article 39, 2-point takedown criteria has not been met. Now, a quad pod does not meet criteria until we have 3 points of contact on the mat. So using the same picture, we have control. We are behind the hips. As soon as a knee goes down, an elbow goes down, or the head touches the mat, one of these three items touch the mat, takedown criteria has been met in accordance with Article 39. What you will see a lot of times is when an offensive wrestler gets a defensive wrestler in a quad pod, they will sag back behind the hips, get behind a knee, and try to drive this knee down, touching the mat. We as referees, we need to ensure that we lower our level and we can see down underneath the wrestler looking for a knee, an elbow, or this head going down and touching the mat. Now, not all quad pods are going to have this much space between the wrestler and the mat. If we look down at the bottom, we will see in the blue wrestler is in a quad pod, and we can see how very little space between his knees and his hips are to the mat. This is where we, as refs, need to be really down extremely low, looking across, looking in to make sure that we don't have a touch. Now, a second facet of the quad pod is the defensive wrestler gets thrown. So in the top picture again, the red wrestler has blue in a quad pod. If he drives him down and we have a third point of contact, we have a two-point takedown has been met. Now, if he would happen to lift and throw blue into danger, shoulders past 90, elbow, shoulder, head touching the mat, we have a 4-point action. Now, the quad pod here is considered the standing position because parterre has not been established. We are still in a standing position. So let's look at the difference between a takedown to a turn versus a throw. So in our top sequence of photographs, pictures, in the first picture, it shows us that blue has red in a quad pod. He has control. He is behind the hips. He does not have 3 points of contact. Therefore, takedown criteria has not been met. Now, blue drives red down to the mat, as we can see in the middle photograph. Control, behind the hips, 3 points of contact. Takedown criteria has been met. We have a 2-point takedown. Now you can see in the middle picture that blue is loading up a gut wrench. And in the third picture, you can see blue turns red into danger, meeting Article 39, 2-point turn into danger criteria, in that the shoulders are past 90 degrees. We have an elbow, a shoulder, or a head touching the mat. Therefore, that meets 2-point criteria. So in the top sequence, quad pod, takedown to the mat, 2 points, gut wrench, turn into danger, 2 more points. In the bottom set of sequence photographs, again, blue has red in a quad pod, control behind the hips, not 3 points of contact. Again, takedown criteria has not been met. Now, unlike the top sequence, instead of driving red to the mat, blue continues turning from his position and throws red into danger. Now, like I stated a little earlier, that the quad pod position is considered the standing position. Therefore, in the bottom set of pictures, we went from standing to danger. Therefore, we met Article 39 4-point criteria. So when we, in freestyle and Greco-Roman, when we have a quad pod situation, it's not clear cut on how the scoring solution is going to occur. As we see, it can turn into a takedown and a turn, or it can go to a throw into danger, depending on the offensive attack that the offensive wrestler decides to do. So let's take a look at a video real quick, freestyle video, and take a look at a quad pod situation, a scenario. As we see, blue goes on the attack and he attempts to slide by. He gets behind red. Now you can see when blue gets behind red, he's in control. He's behind the hips. What happens, what you see here is red immediately comes up into a quad pod position or a standing position. At this point, no points have been scored. Article 39, 2-point takedown, has not been met. Now at this point, instead of driving, as I mentioned in the last couple slides, instead of driving red down to the mat where you have a third point of contact, knee, shoulder, knee, elbow, or head, blue in turn hops to the side and he begins a throwing action right there, and he winds up going feet to danger, meeting Article 39 4-point criteria. So one more time, we take a look at it. Blue attacks, goes on a slide by, goes by, lifts, turns. That is a 4-point action. Four-point action, feet to back. Ladies and gentlemen, this concludes our webinar on the quad pod. I hope you found it informative and helpful. Thank you for joining us, and see you on the mats.